So picture this. You're standing in a world-famous art museum, right?
Okay, I'm there.
And you are staring up at this canvas painted in 1907. It's totally abstract. The figures are, like, really distorted. You've got faces shown from the front and the side simultaneously.
Right, the classic Cubist look.
Exactly. The angles are just sharp and chaotic. Now, hold that image in your mind. Because what on earth could that specific painting, which is a masterpiece by Pablo Picasso, possibly have to do with preventing a devastating career-ending knee injury for a professional athlete today?
I mean, it sounds like an impossible riddle, honestly.
It really does.
Because you're looking at this little intersection of disciplines that most people would just never think to combine.
Yeah.
Early 20th century art history and cutting-edge 21st century sports science.
Yeah, it's wild.
Hmm.
But bridging that massive gap is our exact mission for this deep dive today. We're going to be unpacking an incredibly fascinating presentation by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa formation.
And we're also pulling concepts from a book titled Picasso, The Deconstruction of the Body.
Right. And the premise they present is just staggering. I mean, it fundamentally challenges the very foundation of how we observe human performance.
It really does. It kind of turns everything upside down.
So before we get into the heavy biomechanics of it all, I want you to think about your favorite athlete. Picture them moving at full speed on a field or a court, whatever sport it is.
Moving incredibly fast, yeah.
Right. Now, picture their coach standing on the sidelines watching them. How much of that athlete's movement is that coach actually seeing?
Well, you'd think they see everything, right? They're right there.
You would think. But the data from Kinexa suggests that relying on traditional human observation might actually mean missing up to 70% of the picture.
Which is just a massive blind spot, 70%.
That's huge.
And that statistic is really the core of the problem here. To understand how a highly trained professional could be missing so much data that's happening, right in front of their eyes, we have to talk about how humans are conditioned to look at the world.
Okay.
And the Kinexa materials argue that this conditioning goes all the way back to the Renaissance.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because blaming the Renaissance for a modern sports injury is a pretty wild concept.
I know it sounds crazy, but the logic actually holds up. So for centuries, classical painting and, well, just observation in general, were governed by this one unbreakable rule.
Which was?
The single perspective, meaning you look at a subject from one fixed point in space. It's orderly, it makes sense to our brains, and it creates a very specific, digestible reality on the canvas.
Right, it basically mimics our physical limitations, right? Like, we have two eyes, but they face the exact same direction.
Exactly.
We process the world from one vantage point at any given moment. So I think of it like looking through a peephole in a door.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right, you see what's directly in front of you perfectly. But you have absolutely no idea what's happening to the left or the right of that narrow view.
Yeah, you're totally blind to the rest of the hallway. And that was the standard until 1907, when Pablo Picasso paints Les Demoiselles d'Avignon.
And he essentially just rips the door right off the hinges.
He really did. He completely shatters that Renaissance convention. He starts painting bodies where the limbs seem to be, like, moving in conflicting directions. He shows the profile and the frontal view at the same time.
Which, to a classical art critic back then, probably just looked like chaos. It looked deformed.
Oh, absolutely. They thought it was a mess. But Dr. Christophe Delong frames this totally differently. He doesn't see it as deformation. He sees it as a breakthrough in truth.
A breakthrough in truth. I like that.
Yeah. The crucial insight from Dr. Delong in these materials is that Picasso wasn't just, distorting reality for shock value. He was capturing a multi-perspective truth.
Right.
Picasso was proving that a complex three-dimensional body can only really be understood when it's viewed from multiple angles simultaneously.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about it. I was trying to wrap my head around this earlier, and I was thinking about it like a flat 2D map of the Earth.
Oh, the Mercator projection stuff.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at a flat map, that single perspective, Greenland looks roughly the same size as Africa, but we know for a fact that Africa is actually about 14 times larger.
Right, the single perspective literally distorts the physical reality.
Exactly. To see the true size and the true relationship of those land masses, you can't just stare harder at the flat map. You have to fold it into a 3D globe. You have to synthesize the angles.
That is a much more accurate way to understand what Picasso was doing with Cubism, honestly. He was unwrapping the human form and just displaying all the data points at once.
Which is brilliant.
It is. And what's really profound about the Kinexa presentation is this realization that this artistic rebellion from 1907 is the exact verbatim definition of modern 3D biomechanical analysis.
Okay, which naturally leads to a really uncomfortable question. If a single point of view is a fundamentally flawed way to look at a static painting or, a map,
Right.
what are the actual consequences of applying that flawed single perspective to a human body moving at elite athletic speeds, generating all that massive force?
Well, the Kinexa presentation answers that with a phrase that serves as the thesis for their entire methodology. They say, "La vue unique too."
The single view kills.
The single view kills.
Yeah.
And the biomechanical data backs up that stark statement completely.
Really? Kills is a strong word.
It is, but when a coach or a trainer analyzes an athlete's gesture from only one plane of motion, they are missing that 70% of available information we mentioned earlier.
Okay, so we need to clearly define what these planes of motion are because they are clearly the key to this whole mystery.
Yeah, let's ground this physically. Human movement happens in 3 dimensions. So first you have the sagittal plane.
Okay, the sagittal plane, that's basically watching someone from their profile, right? Like if I'm standing directly to your left and watching you run past me, I'm observing the sagittal plane.
Yes, you can see forward and backward movement from there, like a knee bending or a foot striking the ground.
Got it.
Second is the frontal plane. That is standing directly face to face with the athlete. From there, you can see side-to-side movement. Think of a player shuffling laterally on a basketball court.
Okay, forward and back, side to side. And the third?
The third is the transverse plane.
I always visualize this one as a drone hovering directly over the athlete's head, like looking straight down.
That's a perfect visual. That drone view captures rotational movement. Twisting. Now, the terrifying consequence of the single view is this.
Okay.
70 to 80% of sports injuries occur in the exact plane of motion that the coach is not looking at.
Wow. Wait, 70 to 80%? I mean, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. If we know these 3 planes exist, and we know injuries happen in the blind spots, why is this still a problem today?
It's a fair question.
Like, couldn't a highly trained coach just stand at a 45-degree angle? Or maybe just look really, really closely? Why can't human expertise overcome this?
What's fascinating here is that the limitation isn't about the coach's knowledge or their visual acuity at all. It's about time and biology.
Biology.
Yeah, an athlete moves through all 3 of those planes, the sagittal, frontal, and transverse, at the exact same millisecond of impact.
Oh, I see.
The human eye and brain simply cannot simultaneously process depth, side-to-side displacement, and rotational torsion at 100 milliseconds. It's biologically impossible.
So by the time the coach processes the knee bending from that side view, the actual moment of impact has already passed.
Right. They literally cannot process the twisting motion happening at that same microsecond. The biological limit of human observation creates a permanent blind spot.
And so the damage is either happening right in that moment or, the foundation for chronic damage is being laid down repetition after repetition.
Yeah.
Let's dig into the actual anatomy of an injury to see how this plays out in real life. Because the presentation has this section titled The Deconstruction of the Body, which outlines exactly what these blind spots are hiding.
Yeah, let's use one of the most devastating injuries in sports as our first example, the anterior cruciate ligament, or ACL tear.
Okay, everyone's nightmare injury.
Totally. Picture a coach standing perfectly to the side of an athlete who's doing jumping drills.
So the coach has a pristine view of the sagittal plane. They're looking right at the profile.
Yes. They can see the knee flexing. They can see the angle of the ankle when they land. And from that single perspective, the athlete's form might look completely flawless.
Right.
The knee is tracking like a perfect hinge. But the research cited in the Kinexa presentation notes that 80% of ACL ruptures are preceded by an internal rotation of the knee.
Wait, an internal rotation, meaning the transverse plane, the twisting plane we were just talking about.
Yes, exactly. The femur and the tibia are twisting against each other.
Yeah.
And this is a violent, tiny micro movement. But because the coach is watching from the side, that rotational torque is 100% invisible to them.
Wow.
The coach thinks the knee is tracking perfectly straight, but underneath the surface, in a completely different dimension, the ligament is just winding up like a rubber band under extreme tension.
That is terrifying. The very mechanism causing the rupture is hiding in plain sight. It's happening simultaneously with the perfect forward bend, but the human eye can only see the bend.
Exactly. Now, the acute trauma of an ACL tear is a really dramatic example, but the presentation also highlights how this single view masks chronic slow-building wear and tear too.
Right, because not every injury is a sudden snap.
Right. They detail a second scenario involving the hips.
And this one stood out to me because it's not a sudden trauma, it's a slow deterioration based on an invisible flaw.
Yeah. Imagine that same coach watching a runner from the side,
Oh.
again, the sagittal view. They're watching the stride length, the foot strike, everything looks super efficient.
Yeah.
But that perfect side view completely misses the lateral displacement of the pelvis in the frontal plane.
So from the side, the runner looks like they are moving perfectly forward. But if the coach were standing face to face with them, they would actually see the runner's hips swaying or dropping side to side with every single step.
Exactly. And when the pelvis drops laterally like that, it forces the contralateral hip, so the hip on the opposite side of the body, to absorb this massive unintended eccentric load.
Ouch.
Yeah, the side-watching coach cannot see this sway. But the data shows this unseen biomechanical flaw leads to a debilitating overload injury in that opposite hip within just 6 months.
Just 6 months of running like that.
Yep.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. Think about your own habits for a second. You don't have to be some elite Olympic athlete to fall victim to this limitation.
Definitely not.
Next time you are at the gym, look at how you set yourself up. What do we almost universally do when we're lifting weights? We stand directly facing a single flat mirror.
You're locking yourself into the frontal plane.
Exactly. We do a squat, we look straight ahead into the glass, and we evaluate our depth and our symmetry. We think, oh, my form is perfect, but we are essentially acting as our own Renaissance painters.
That's a great way to put it.
We're trapped in that single perspective view, entirely blind to the adjacent planes. We can't see if our knees are internally rotating because the mirror can't show us transverse torsion.
No, it can't.
So we are literally watching ourselves brew our own future injuries, and the feedback loop we're relying on, the mirror, is lying to us by omission.
Right. We're all trusting the single view, and the single view kills. The vital information that dictates whether a joint stays healthy or fails catastrophically lives exclusively in those adjacent planes.
Right. So if human biology physically prevents us from seeing all three planes in real time, then the solution obviously can't just be better human coaching, right? Or staring harder at the gym mirror.
Okay, yeah.
The solution has to bypass that biological limit entirely. So how do we break the Renaissance perspective and achieve this Cubist vision to actually protect the body?
Well, this brings us to the core methodology of Kinexa formation.
Yeah.
And to understand it, it requires understanding what Picasso's ultimate goal actually was back in 1907.
Okay.
The objective of Cubism wasn't just to deconstruct the body into some chaotic mess of fractured angles. The goal was a concept Dr. Delong refers to as enriched synthesis.
Enriched synthesis. I like the sound of that.
Yeah. After Picasso deconstructed the body, he recomposed it. He took all those multiple perspectives and synthesized them into a single image that was actually more faithful to the complex reality of the subject than a flat, single-perspective painting could ever be.
So he was building a truer version of reality.
Precisely. And Kinexa is applying that exact philosophical framework to sports biomechanics.
Just replacing the artistic angles with hard biomechanical data.
Exactly. Kinexa synthesizes triplanar data. They're simultaneously capturing the sagittal, frontal, and transverse planes of motion.
So they aren't just, setting up 3 different cameras and watching the video feeds separately on different screens.
Yeah, no. They're taking the data from the side profile, the front view, and the rotational view, and they are mathematically reconstructing them into a single, cohesive 3D model.
Wow.
By achieving that triplanar synthesis, they recompose a complete biomechanical portrait of the athlete in motion.
That's incredible.
It is. This enriched synthesis provides a truth that no single camera angle or human eye could ever possibly reveal. It takes those invisible risks, that internal knee rotation winding up the ACL or the lateral pelvic sway overloading the hip,
Right.
and it just drags them out of the blind spot and into the light.
So what does this all mean? The implications of that shift are massive. I mean, you transition from reacting to an injury after a player goes down on the field screaming in pain. It's to detecting the micro movements that predict the injury weeks or even months in advance. You can intervene before the tension on the ligament ever reaches the breaking point.
You're preventing the failure because you finally possess total vision. And, for anyone listening who wants to explore the technical depths of how they actually achieve this synthesis, the source materials highlight a broader ecosystem you can check out.
Yeah, we've heavily referenced the Kinexa ebook today, Picasso, The Deconstruction of the Body.
Right. But they also have visual presentations available at formation.kinexa.ai, which are invaluable if you want to see this triplanar analysis actually applied to human movement.
Oh, seeing it visually must make a huge difference.
It really does. There is also a specific episode they point to called Le Visionnaire du Geste, episode XO2, which focuses on the visionaries of movement and dives a lot deeper into this methodology.
So the materials collectively establish that they are building an entirely new standard of biomechanical truth.
They are.
Which is amazing, because when you look at the whole picture, Kinexa is essentially acting as a technological Picasso for modern athletics.
That's a great analogy.
They've taken an abstract, century-old artistic rebellion against how we see the world and turned it into a tangible, multi-perspective force field against physical injury.
Art history becoming applied sports medicine is a rare and honestly fascinating bridge to cross.
It really is. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today on this deep dive. We started with a 1907 painting that shattered the single point of view.
Yep.
We explored the terrifying reality that whether you're an elite coach on the sidelines or just a regular person in front of a gym mirror, single-plane observation misses the vast majority of injury-causing movements.
It's all about those blind spots.
And we ended up at Kinexa's 3D triplanar synthesis, which proves that the only way to truly protect the body is to capture all the angles at once.
Which leaves us with a core mantra from the Kinexa presentation, a phrase that I think carries weight far beyond just biomechanics.
Let's hear it.
La vérité exige trois angles. Truth requires 3 angles.
Truth requires 3 angles. That's powerful.
It is. We've spent this time focused on the physical truth of our bodies, right? How understanding our mechanical reality requires simultaneous, multiple perspectives.
Right.
But if that rigorous standard is required just to understand a simple running stride, it begs a much larger question about how we operate in the world.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Take that a step further. Where else are we using a flawed model?
Exactly. Think about the complex, high-stakes areas of your own life. When it comes to evaluating a new relationship, making a major business decision, or, analyzing a complicated piece of news, are you operating from a single, comfortable perspective?
Wow.
Are you just staring straight ahead in the frontal plane, convinced that because the image makes sense to you, you must be seeing the whole truth? Or are you actively seeking out the adjacent angles, knowing that the most critical, reality-altering information is almost certainly hiding in your blind spot?